Openhand Shift Diaries, an informal viewpoint on the consciousness shift. For this one, I thought we'd explore mirroring and awareness. How when we're in internal awareness, the universe mirrors back to us what we're being, and how that can be a phenomenal engine for change. The challenge of society is that it is so distracting. It's almost like it's purposefully designed to pull your attention out there. Entertainment, distraction, busyness, objectives, goals, stuff that I should or shouldn't do, these kinds of things, all forming like a weave, a web of conditioning that I then am bound into if I'm not careful. And this is incredibly disempowering because it takes attention away from the true source of your power, which is the configuration of consciousness and the movement of soul within. And crucially, my inner configuration of consciousness is what creates the outer mirror. Not just the aligned aspect of myself, but also the misaligned or distorted aspect. Now usually this might be something that we might want to avoid because it comes with tightness, discomfort, sometimes projection, or even taboo, these kinds of things. It might come with that. And so there's a lot of emphasis in the spiritual mainstream about not expressing those kinds of behaviorisms. And that's actually paradoxically very limiting, self-defeating, because that compacted consciousness is already creating outside, and we're not always aware of it. And then the temptation is to plaster on top something else, some kind of identity of how we think we should be, and that becomes ultimately very limiting. And as the shift gathers in strength, it's going to pull apart any kind of identity that we might be hanging on to. So the important thing is to honor what is going on inside, to bring conscious awareness to it, even the tightness, especially that, and then to allow it to express into it, to honor it. And as we honor it, it's going to blow up into our outer environment. Now we might want to contain that, yes, not project it at people, for example. You don't want to do that, but nevertheless to express it. And in the expression, then what happens is you start to touch the fragment of soul that's stuck in that distortion. The point being about a distortion is that it is a distortion of truth. And so by honoring and getting into it, expressing, feeling it, means you can start to touch that fragment of soul that's stuck or buried there. It's what the shamans call soul retrieval. To give you an example of that, let's take anger or rage even. Obviously, expressing anger and rage out into the world is going to have a very detrimental reflection back to us, but maybe we're containing that anyway. Maybe there's frustration because that's being bottled up. So the important thing is to allow it to come up and express. And then what I may find within that is the true source of it, which might be, for example, courage, willpower, commitment, tenacity, strength, all of these kinds of things, which are all essential fundamental qualities of the soul, as well as surrender and acceptance. So by allowing myself to come into that feeling, even if I recognize it's distorted, I'll come into it, express it, allow it to come out, the mirrors will shape around me, then I'll get to see, feel what I'm really being, and allow the soul, the aligned, authentic aspect of soul, to come inside and integrate. That's the key, that's the important thing. So honoring the mirror is utterly essential, and feeling it, experiencing it to integrate. How does that integration process actually happen? When I express, it's like I start to resonate the fragment of soul with the distortion on top. I start to resonate that. Here's the anger and here's the rage, but I'm also resonating the soul underneath, the fragment underneath. Now as I start to resonate that, now I can feel it. So the mirror is not telling me this is how you must be. It's not some kind of logical idea of what I should be doing and how I should be being, but instead the mirror causes that activation. This is what a good catalyst would do, cause that activation to happen. And as that resonance starts to initiate, I'm going to feel it, and the distortion is going to peel off, and then the fragment will integrate. That's how I can work with the mirror, and how essential it is to allow authentic, honest expression to come through. It's the same with lack of self-worth or lack of self-love, these kinds of things which often come up in spiritual mainstream, in spiritual work. And it's because a lot of the time I think people have been told in society they're not good enough. It's like we have to achieve something in order to be accepted, rather than being embraced, accepted for exactly who and what we are. Of course, the key is to accept ourselves first, and then the outer world would respond. So what is it in that potential lack of self-worth? Well, I would say, for example, it could be humility. So I might explore into the sense of, well, I'm not worthy or not good enough. Maybe that causes me to be more surrendering, a little more withdrawn, and maybe that's okay. But maybe within that introversion, maybe I become more humble, discover a deeper sense of humility, and come to the world with that sense for a given situation or circumstance. Remembering that the soul is going to ebb and flow, change and adapt according to the landscape. Sometimes it will be surrendering, sometimes willful. So by getting into the sense of maybe lack of self-worth or self-love, then I can feel something like humility, or whatever it is turns out to be for you. And you'll feel that vibration, and then the resonance will integrate, more infusion will happen, you'll feel more aligned, more in harmony with yourself. And this is crucial, because then you'll come into alignment with the shift, the movement of energy itself. And that becomes the driving force in one's life, which then becomes incredibly aligned and productive. So mirroring and awareness, utterly essential with the shift. I wish you well with it. Thank you so much for tuning in.